Thank you, boss, for inviting me. Nagwekar sir has made my job easier. We'll still go through the gist of it. This is going to be one single long case. I hope I'll complete in 10 minutes. So this was, now I think the most blunders in orthopedic infections happen in post-surgical cases and SSIs, actually, in the management, in the diagnosis, and in the antibiotics. So we'll just discuss a post-surgical case. So this was a case I was referred around 3 to 4 months ago. Post D12 to L5 TLIF done for a L2, L3 infective spondylodiscitis. So we got the diagnosis. The antibiotic was started as per the culture report, but the wound, unfortunately, after suture removal, started developing sinuses. And then this was started to the patient. Okay, tablet augmentin 625 BD into 10 days for a post-surgical infection. Now this is wrong at 2 levels. I would like this to be interactive if someone can tell me what is wrong with this prescription. Sorry? Okay, very good. Dose is wrong, and more importantly, sorry sir? Okay, so I'm talking about a SSI basically. An SSI, we don't know the extent. Yeah. Yes, we'll come to it, sir. Okay, so in Mumbai, if this case is done at a tertiary care, and actually nowadays even at a nursing home level, if you have an SSI, it is going to be 99% of the time a resistant bug. Your common cough, cold, UTI wala antibiotics are not going to work on these cases. Okay, so choice of antibiotic is wrong. Usually you will go for post-surgical infections will be resistant gram-negative infections. Your normal augmentins, your normal septums and cefixime and all those are not going to work. So choice of drug, plus we have been dosing augmentin wrong all this while. Trust me, I used to use this dose when I was practicing as a physician in medicine. The correct dose, we will come to it, is actually, if you see here, this is from the Johns Hopkins recommendations. SSTI dose is 1 gram twice a day, and even for your other usual infections, it is 625 Q8 hourly. Okay, it is a very, very common malpractice to give augmentin 625 BD. Okay, we are underdosing it, causing more resistance. Now, common antibiotic mistakes are, number 1, empiric choices are wrong. Second is dosing is wrong. Whenever you're dealing with any syndrome, please look at your hospital antimicrobiogram. Your microbiologist will be sending it to your email once every 6 months, and usually it will be found in your spam folder. Nobody reads it. Please open it, check your culture reports, see what the most common organisms are, most common sensitivities are, and please attack your SSIs aggressively and early as per those sensitivity reports. Okay? Now, when it was referred to me, I advised this doesn't look good. This will most probably be a deep infection. Please operate open, look at the extent and send introp cultures. Again, there was resistance from the surgical part, and so a swab was sent. I said, swab mat bhejo, please send an introp sample. So as a compromise, if you looked at the wound, put a swab stick deep into the sinus and sent a culture. Okay? And that thing grew this. Now, any comments on this bug sensitivity, and what would you give now to this patient? Very, very likely contamination. Okay? So, sampling is the next level where the problems happen. Okay? First of all, staph epidermidis is a skin colonizer. It does not mean that it doesn't cause infections. However, most 9 out of 10 times it will be a contaminant or a colonizer, should not be treated. Second thing is, where did your vision go first for the sensitivity? If you have to treat this, what would you give? Sorry? I heard linezolid? Okay. Okay. So, the thing is, something that I have found is, other than operating, the thing that gives most joy to surgeons is a culture report showing linezolid sensitive. Okay. They said, दिख गया linezolid 600 BD Chalo, okay? Very, very, very wrong practice, okay? For reasons being, as sir said, number one, if you are dealing with a deep infection where your antibiotic duration is going to be more than 2 weeks, avoid, no one will tolerate linezolid, okay? Everyone develops neuropathy, everyone develops anemia. Countless patients have come back in failure because of anemia, and we see the patient was taking linezolid for 4 weeks and 6 weeks, okay? Second thing, every few months now we are seeing increasing resistance of linezolid in TB. Linezolid is our second line drug. It is our savior drug for multi-drug resistant and XDR TB, and we have started seeing resistance because of indiscriminate use of linezolid. Please avoid linezolid in deep infections. Please avoid it in source uncontrolled infections. Please only use it for simple cases, early superficial SSI, cellulitis, and that's it, okay? Or as an oral step down after you've completed IV course of 2, 3, 4 weeks, okay? Very likely after source control. So wrong sample, if you send shit to the lab, you're going to get a shitty report, okay? And you will be left going around in circles. So finally, the surgeon caved in. We sent cultures from inside. And as I told him, it was going to be a drug-resistant gram-negative infection. And it eventually turned out to be a multi-drug resistant Pseudomonas. So now this guy, once the report comes in, he calls me frantically, okay, what drug-resistant Pseudomonas आया है, and मुझे बिल्कुल risk नहीं लेना है. I am starting on the most sensitive antibiotics, which is number 1, colistin, and number 2, after seeing the MIC, tigecycline, okay? Because I don't want to take risk with meropen. So now, I like an input, what is wrong with this prescription? Was it the right choice? Would you do anything different, or would you agree with this? So first thing is, sir already discussed that the numbers here don't mean anything without the breakpoints, okay? A sensitivity of 1 can actually be worse than a sensitivity of 16, okay? Suppose the breakpoint for a fosfomycin is 48 and a breakpoint for colistin is 2, the fosfomycin will perform much better than colistin. That's the first concept, okay? Always compare the numbers against a breakpoint. Second thing, what else is problematic with this prescription? Colistin with tigecycline for this report. Oh. Sorry, sir? Both are gram-negative. First thing is, they're toxic drugs, but we have to give these drugs because of the flora we have today, okay? Colistin itself does not have very good bone penetration, okay? Site penetration is actually not very good. Second thing, tigecycline is actually intrinsically resistant for Pseudomonas, but it was given in this report. So most labs outside are actually, the reports are interpreted on disk methods and are conveyed into MIC values by technicians, and some random microbiologist remotely reports it and dishes the report off. This is the reality in our country. When you're getting microbiology reports from outside tertiary care institutes, please, please, please take them with a pinch of salt and interpret them accordingly. They may not always show the correct sensitivities, especially with intrinsic resistant organisms. Okay, tigecycline will never ever work for Pseudomonas, even if it is given sensitive, for example. Okay, so drug-bug mismatch you have to be careful of, and drug-site mismatch also is important. So actually this is data from a lot of studies showing concentration at the bone level for various antibiotics. I'll just simplify this in this slide. So when it comes to bone penetration, higher antibiotics like colistin and polymyxin don't have very good penetration. However, for multi-drug resistant infections, we are forced to give these antibiotics for lack of any other choices. Followed by metronidazole, penicillins, flucloxacillin are not very good for bones. However, if you have tetracyclines, doxyimmunotigecycline, ticoplanin, fluoroquinolones, linezolid, clinda, augmentin, cefepime, ceftriaxone, dalbavancin, and as I missed in this list is Septran, which sir said earlier, are very good oral options. Once source is controlled, given your IV therapy, you can actually go for these oral options as step down, okay, if they're sensitive. So also one more concept is, this is actually an old concept, lines of which are blurring, of bactericidal versus bacteristatic antibiotics. So earlier they used to think that bactericidal are much more effective, but static ones are also good enough. So what I would recommend in bone infections and spine infections is start with a sidal antibiotic, source control, start with a sidal antibiotic. Once you're good, then step down to a static one to complete your course. Instead of giving a 6 weeks IV, if you have a good oral antibiotic on the static side, you can complete the last 2 weeks, probably even with a linezolid, not an issue. So duration of treatment, again, sir has discussed that. I'll just go forward. And the last point I would like to bring across is there is no better antibiotic than source control. That is a big major resistance, especially in post-surgical cases. Get a native vertebral osteomyelitis, people are happy to operate, people are happy to biopsy, but when it comes to surgical cases, always it's just a discharge. If it's my own case, it's a discharge. If it's someone else's case, it's an infection. This is a dictum when it comes to surgeons. Again, surgeons have taught me this. But please be aware, when you're in doubt, always open and confirm it rather than deal with an implant infection later and leading to 3 more surgeries. Okay? So this is the second case. I think we have time. This is a TB case, basically. This was a lady from Ghatkopar who had mid-back pain for 2-3 weeks. An MRI was done. And a L1, L2 spondylolischitis and L1 vertebra had almost collapsed with compressive symptoms towards the right side. Was seen by an orthopedician and without being advised a biopsy was started on this treatment. So forgive his handwriting. So I'll just tell you the prescription. Arsenix 300 by 450, Levoflox 500, Pizina is 750 twice a day, and Combutol 600 once a day. This is the AKT given. So now please tell me what all has gone wrong here. Okay. Sir, yes. First thing is biopsy was not done. Biggest blunder here. Okay. Levoflox is a second line drug, should not be used loosely. Yes. But so what if the weight was 35 kg? So yeah. So the next piece of information you want here is the weight. Okay, the weight was never asked. The weight was 63 kg. Now, at what levels is this wrong? The dosages are wrong. Okay, dose-based calculation. So many a time at the spinal level, very standard doses are being written by people. Okay, every patient's dose is different. It has to be modified as per the weight. Combutol dose was wrong. Number one, Levoflox was unnecessarily added. In case we also use Levoflox for primary TB many times, the dose of Levoflox is also wrong. For TB, it's actually 1 gram. For this weight, okay, under 30 kgs only it is 500, it goes up to 750 and 1 gram. 500 is wrong at many levels. You're causing more resistance in the TB. Next thing is Arsenix. Is there any wrong with Arsenix? 300 by 450 for a patient of 63 kgs for a spinal TB.
So it's 450, 600 would be the right dose.
Dose is less. Yeah. Second thing, 450 by 600 would be a better dose.
I think, you know, these drug combinations, they have these 4 drug AKT combinations. Often the dosages in that are very wrong. That's why I never like to give these combined fixed drug combinations. You can't get the dosages right with that.
Yes. So the government of India is actually promoting fixed drugs combinations. I think everyone has dealt with it, where there's a little INH, little Pizina, little arsen and little ethambutol. So these combinations are good at a national program level. Okay, they're good at a very national program level. They're good for primary TB, where your drug concentrations in the blood are not very important because whatever is circulating in the blood will go into the lung and affect the TB. But when it comes to sites like spine with high burden disease, when it comes to CNS TB, the drug concentrations may not be enough to give to treat your TB there. Okay, so please avoid drug combinations when it comes to high burden disease and difficult to penetrate sites. That is very important. Arsenix is a combination tablet. Actually, if you look at the molecular level, INH and rifampicin compete with each other for absorption in the stomach. Okay. Second thing is, many times it's not been advised to take empty stomach. Okay, many times the government program actually tells people to take the tablets after lunch. So the rifampicin virtually doesn't get absorbed. Okay, these are huge blunders in combination therapies and in the government therapy. So even if you're sending the patient to the government sector for treatment, please at least ask them to take the tablets empty stomach, even if they're not affording for private sector treatment. And if possible, see, AKT tablets are not very expensive. It's going to cost hardly 1,000, 2,000 a month. But the outcome is going to be very, very, very different. So split doses, adequate doses are very important. These are common mistakes done with TB. Okay, I think I'm done for the day. Thank you. Any questions?